Umbanda as well, there is
Right.
the same families of Jinn. Some of them are in their tradition. We have 13 clans. They have
Mhm.
some of them in their tradition, the Kubanda, I believe, because they also were from Africa. So I'm not
Right.
sure if I can be quoted on that. But I know for a fact there's an Egyptian women sorcerer tradition, which is Zaar,
Zaar.
dominated by women. So it's more a matriarch
Mhm.
tradition. Men always have like a helping position in that tradition, and it's technically Orisha. So
Mhm.
I feel there's some African tradition that's very common with the
Yeah.
um, yeah, the other tradition from Brazil and Caribbean.
I went to a czar when I was in Egypt years ago,
Mm.
and the person who taught me took me said this is an exorcism. We're getting rid of the jinn, but and then he called it jinn party, and it was clear that they were there. This was more like you're right, getting ridden by the jinns. In other words, people were like it was like a voodoo, like voodoo or santeria, where the spirit will overtake the woman and then start speaking through them. So
Yes.
so they're not
Did
really
they do?
exercising them, right? So it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
that's a very rich tradition. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
it's very integral on animal sacrifice, though. They
Oh, I
sacrifice, I
did not know
believe,
that.
four animals.
Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that in a Zaar, then it was a party. If a real Zaar has to have at least four animals, like a rabbit, a chicken, or
Mm.
a turkey, something like that. And of course, that's all put into proper use, but it's integral to their tradition too. It's a good thing to differentiate too between being ridden and being possessed,
Hmm.
because being possessed is not the same as being ridden, and I'm sure anybody from the voodoo tradition
Hmm.
understands that too.
Right. Yeah, in Upper Egypt, isn't that? That's a pretty. I'm not gonna say common, but somewhat common. The ghost riders of Upper Egypt, they call them. That they allow themselves to be ridden by these spirits. Are they jinn or what? Are they orishas? What would you say?
Well, there is, you see, Jinn is inorganic being or
Hmm.
unseen.
Right.
Any unseen is categorized under a Jinn.
Hmm.
You mentioned fairies, you say demons, you say anything will categorize under that. It's just every nation would call them in a certain way. But for us, those are all Jinn, some
Hmm.
forms. You have the major clans of the Jinn that works with certain tradition. Like I mentioned, Zaar, I think they work with a specific 13 or 11 clans
Hmm.
that they work with consistently, and they take the oath and the vow and the work with each one of them. Each one have a certain Zaar. Um, but yeah, and most people use it for, as you said, to get ridden, to do facilitate healing and community work, problems, mostly dreaming, someone having possession or something inorganic interfering in their life. It's dealt with through the ritual of Zar. Any unseen, we need to understand this. Any unseen uh, being, any inorganic intelligence is a jinn. Now,
Right.
within that, they
Hmm.
vary. There is we have the spectrum from angelic to demonic, and actually, some tradition would call every those angels. So they
Hmm.
will have malaika, the older writings would have the word malaika, angels, that will have everything underneath it, including the jinn
Hmm.
and whatever, because they're kind of still unseen. So they can be lumped together. But yes, of course, and even I told you an established tradition with other names for their beings. I'll give you an example. The Olympian gods, jinn. The older primordial gods, jinn, all of them.
Wow.
So when we work with Hecate, for us, she's one of the major. Heka is the trifold power junction. That's a Jinn queen,
Hmm.
and you can think of it in a sense that the Islam view anything of divinity to be one. So
Hmm.
anything that was viewed in the world before as gods is just replaced in the structure of the new or the old covenant, which is
Hmm.
there's one point undivisible. There's all these things. Some are in its hierarchy of facilitating things to happen, like
Mhm.
angelic forces. Some are to more of decay forces, and so forth. So yes, indeed, there is jinn everywhere. There is even Omar. Omar is in every given house in the world. Anything you build automatically will have a cast, which is like the familiar spirits of the place. And
Mhm.
before you do some serious working, if you're actually conjuring a genuine influence, um, not just the practice of the imaginarium or the
Mhm.
scrying, if you're actually conjuring something, you have to send the house familiar away. And I believe some of the new translated scripts, I think by Stephen Skinner, he mentioned, I don't know what you guys
Mhm.
call it in English, but the idea that you have to send these away. We know what their king name is, how they live,
Right.
how you can make them facilitate the work for you.
Mhm.
Normally, it's like having, I don't want to give a bad example and say animals, of course, but it's like having people living and they don't want to let anybody else come in.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Even if the thing coming is more stronger, people in the place will push it, will make it uncomfortable, will make. So you want to send them away and you have to bring them back because they
Right.
do protect the house. So my
Mhm.
point is, yes, every place have jinn. It's a matter of semantics. Is that the word? uh,
Mhm.
we are hung up. So when someone come and say, for instance, Mark Allen Smith, he works with the primordial gods and da da da. Those are jinn. And someone else work with the Olympian, same. Not only that, Scott, but you will find there is duplicity of things. So if
Mhm.
you're a true magician, you can't afford to waste inorganic energy of working with a different mask or manifestation of the same spirit. First of
Mhm.
all, you will lose what we call sulta ruhaniya, spiritual authority. In front of the spirit, they will know you can tell. If
Mhm.
you're viewing the same formation, inorganic formation, and intelligence with a different deific mask, and you're replicating the work, working with Balial, then working with Anubis, then working as if they're so different things, then you will lose, or they will categorize you no different than when you go into a foreign market to buy something and they can tell if you live there or they can make some buck on you. So it's no different.